It's before dawn in the mountains of Jalisco. Pine forests swallow the road. Fog presses low against the asphalt, turning headlights into dull halos that barely reach 10 meters ahead. A convoy moves uphill toward Tapalpa. Engines low, radios quiet. This isn't a routine patrol. It isn't a search warrant. It's a manhunt operation years in the making. Because somewhere in these mountains is one of the most wanted men in the Western Hemisphere. A man who built an empire powerful enough to challenge the Mexican state itself. Nemesio Oseguera Cervantes, El Mencho. For more than a decade, authorities hunted him across rural strongholds, safe houses, and hidden compounds protected by a security network trained like soldiers. But this time is different. Intelligence suggests he's here, close enough to strike, but dangerous enough that failure could trigger nationwide retaliation. Because taking down a cartel leader isn't just an arrest, it's a spark. At the time of the operation, both Mexico and the United States had placed massive rewards on El Mencho, up to $15 million from the US alone. He was accused of coordinating global drug shipments, arms trafficking, and acts of extreme violence, designed not just to eliminate rivals, but to intimidate governments. Under his command, the Cartel de Jalisco New Generation, CJNG, expanded into one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the world. But what made CJNG different wasn't only scale, it was strategy. Older cartels preferred corruption and invisibility. CJNG embraced spectacle. Armored convoys driving openly, propaganda videos showing heavily armed fighters, direct attacks against military targets. This wasn't a group pretending to be invisible. It was a group demonstrating that it didn't need to hide. Before the name El Mencho inspired fear in security briefings, he was a boy in rural Aguililla, Michoacan, a region where poverty wasn't temporary, it was structural. He worked in avocado fields, dropped out of school around 5th grade. By his early teens, he was guarding marijuana plantations, learning the basic rules of territory, loyalty, and survival. Opportunities were scarce. So in the 1980s, he crossed illegally into the United States, searching for a different life. But migration didn't transform him into something new. It exposed him to a larger system. California in the late 1980s was a crossroads of narcotics routes, gang networks, and cross-border trafficking operations. Here, El Mencho wasn't powerful. He was small, but observant. Arrest records show early charges for theft and firearms possession, followed by narcotics offenses. Federal cases later described him acting as a lookout during a heroin transaction, cautious enough to suspect a setup. He eventually accepted a plea deal, served time in Texas, and was deported back to Mexico around age 30. But deportation didn't reset his life. It upgraded his experience. He returned with knowledge of U.S. distribution networks, law enforcement methods, and the economics of trafficking at scale. Back in Mexico, he briefly worked in local police forces, long enough to understand procedures, communication patterns, and vulnerabilities. Then he joined the Mencho cartel. This is where ambition met opportunity. But his rise wasn't built on violence alone. It was built on family. He married Rosalinda Gonzalez Valencia, linking himself to a powerful clan with deep financial and operational influence. In organized crime, trust is scarce. Family reduces uncertainty. Through this alliance, the cartel structure around him began shifting from a loose network into something more durable, a dynasty. By the late 2000s, arrests and assassinations destabilized existing leadership within the Mencho cartel. Internal conflict erupted. El Mencho led one faction, and won. From the ruins emerged a new organization, the Cartel de Jalisco New Generation, CJNG. Unlike older cartels that focused on holding territory quietly, CJNG pursued rapid expansion combined with psychological warfare. public displays of strength, sophisticated weaponry, disciplined operational units. The message was simple: resistance would be costly. By the mid-2000s, CJNG had spread across key trafficking corridors and diversified into multiple criminal enterprises. But 2015 marked a turning point. Coordinated attacks against security forces escalated into open confrontation. Convoys ambushed, roads blocked with burning vehicles, a military helicopter shot down. These were not isolated incidents. They were demonstrations of capability, proof that the cartel could challenge the state directly and survive the response. For civilians, the implication was chilling. Violence was no longer confined to hidden battlefields. It could erupt anywhere. Mencho's organization relied heavily on relatives placed in strategic roles: brothers, in-laws, children, each linked to aspects of operations, ranging from logistics to finance. His son, known as El Menchito, was widely considered second in command before being captured, extradited to the United States, and convicted. Other family members faced arrests tied to alleged money laundering and support activities. This structure allowed CJNG to continue functioning even when leaders were removed. But it also created a risk. Target enough key relatives, and succession becomes uncertain. Around 2020, reports surfaced suggesting El Mencho suffered from serious kidney disease. Sightings became rare. Public appearances disappeared. Speculation spread rapidly. Was he ill? In hiding? Already dead? Authorities claimed there was no confirmation. But in criminal organizations, perception matters as much as reality. Silence invites competition. Potential successors begin consolidating influence quietly, preparing for a transition that may come suddenly. Then comes February 22nd, 2026. Mexican forces, supported by U.S. intelligence, launch an operation near Tapalpa. Details remain fragmented, but reports indicate El Mencho is taken into custody during the raid. During transfer to Mexico City, he suffers fatal injuries in the crossfire. 59 years old. For a moment, it appears the decade-long pursuit has finally ended. But removing a leader doesn't erase the organization behind him. Violence erupts across multiple states. Vehicles burned, highways blocked, clashes reported. Retaliation serves a strategic function. It demonstrates continued capability. A cartel doesn't need to defeat the state militarily. It only needs to prove it can disrupt normal life at will. Fear amplifies that message. El Mencho's death creates the scenario his organization was designed to avoid: a leadership vacuum. With key relatives imprisoned or targeted, the question of succession becomes unstable. Multiple contenders, potential internal conflict, external rivals watching for weakness. Because criminal empires rarely collapse overnight, they fracture, adapt, or reorganize. El Mencho is gone, but the infrastructure he built, roots, finances, alliances, enforcement networks, doesn't disappear with one man. In many ways, the most dangerous period begins after a dominant leader falls. Power seeks a new center, and until one emerges, instability fills the space. In Mexico, that is often the real ending, not closure, a vacuum.